Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and consider joining my Patreon for access to new videos 12 to 24 hours early. So, welcome to part 2 of the victory lap against the self-help industry featuring right now Dave Hollis. We are going to be rejoining the interview where we left off because there's still so much material to cover that will really expose how full of shit he was when you compare that with how he now is stepping back from social media because he was actually sad instead of happy, which was a total shock to all of us. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend that you check it out, and I will put a card up here to make it easy for you. Also, one more housekeeping note. I've been getting some questions about how to do submissions. The submissions link is down in the description. It's a Google form. You can upload files up to 1 terabyte, but have mercy. Oh, and also, if you like the outro song, there is a link in the description for a download. Yeah. It'll probably be going on. I still have to finish up the master to do a release of it. But yeah. Okay. Let's go.
Codependent things that existed in our relationship.
Oh, well, thank God you're not in any sort of codependent relationship of any kind at this point.
There was some stuff that kept me from being as connected to myself. And so the discovery of where passion might exist in my life or where curiosity might exist in my life became, well, there's only one way that I'm actually going to get to the bottom of it, and that's by just saying yes to a bunch of stuff. I'm going to probably eliminate or disqualify a bunch of...
Oh, like you in the triathlon were disqualified?
Things that I am definitely not curious about or definitely don't have passion for, but I have to start by saying yes. So that was the first big thing.
Really fast, I want to tie that to something you say in the book that I thought was really profound. So you talk about, you have to be very careful about how you frame something. And I forget the exact example you use in the book, but you're like, let me describe the same thing 2 different ways. Both are true, but one is like, you failed at this thing and, that set you back at work or whatever. But also, this is also true. From that thing, you learned this, and that's what ended up giving you the promotion. And it's like, which one of those you want to focus on and tell yourself is really going to determine your future. Tony Robbins has a really great quote where he says, the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your life.
Well, that is a very privileged statement if I ever heard one. And to say that the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your life. Okay. Certainly more so than socioeconomic status or race or anything like that, or gender. It's definitely the quality of your questions. God. Also, the whole, you can describe things 2 ways and one of them's true. I mean, yeah. That is true, but I mean, just wow, amazing, super deep, philosophical, incredible, never been done before.
And was there a conscious thing around that? Like, I need to ask a different question around, okay, I can look at this as everything has fallen apart, or I can look at this as this is now my opportunity to change who I am in a way that I find exciting.
It's interesting because it actually ties to what my
yeah, because if you don't acknowledge that there's a failure and you're refusing to acknowledge when things are falling apart around you, you will be very motivated to change yourself. Because personally, when I really feel like super motivated to change myself, it's always when I think that nothing is seriously wrong. That's so motivating, you guys.
Because it actually ties to what my second thing was going to be, which was this conceit, this belief that good would come from it, which is hard to manufacture at the beginning when you're sitting at the bottom of a ditch of...
Were you leaning on faith on that, or was there something else that triggered that?
Faith, yes, but not just like religious faith. But this was like belief that the things that I would need in the journey would present themselves along the way.
Because that's just how life works?
No,
or?
because I believe that if you look for things, you find them. And I was at a place where I was
Tom kind of took the words out of my mouth with the, because that's how life works.
desperate to find the evidence that good could still come from this. And so I went on the hunt for it.
Dave, looking for evidence and looking for anything or anyone to tell you what you want to hear are two completely different processes.
And when even as I'm, Cal Ripken's streak of crying on consecutive days it was hard.
Only old people get that reference,
Well,
for the record,
I know,
but great reference.
I did have plenty of days where just getting out of bed felt like the win, and yet I'd still start my day with gratitude, like finding the good that was already present despite the conditions that I was in was a way to just hack a little bit of how I might, because of that gratitude practice, go on the hunt for things to be grateful for. And so some of it was just this conceit of good things are going to come out of this. You will become something because of the post-traumatic growth that can come.
Okay, are you also saying that you have PTSD now? Like, what the fuck? Like, can we stop throwing that diagnosis around? Second of all, how do you know that good things are going to come from it? I mean, that seems really like setting yourself up for disappointment.
Out of the hardest thing that you've ever experienced. And it's, of course, way easier to say that and see that today than it was in real time. But I just had a little thing here, a little thing there, a text from a pastor that came every day for the first 2 months of the experience, 11 really profound words. What small piece of sadness can I hold for you today? Right?
Why do I love that sentence so much? That's great. I love that. I'm going to start saying that. I'm going to be like, what small piece of sadness can I hold for you today? I like that.
He wasn't trying to diminish the pain or grief. He wasn't trying to even do anything more than just offer solidarity and some empathy for the fact that this is a shared experience kind of thing. I'll walk alongside you while you do it. But the fact that that showed up every day was...
Dave's fucking blown away by an automated daily text message.
Just a reminder, some evidence of the things you need are going to show up when you need them along this journey. I'm out running and a new neighbor has happened to move in down the street. I had my head down. I was very emotional that day. I was not interested, like I got on a plane kind of thing. I don't want to talk to you in the seat next to me. And yet I ran past him. I ended up turning around to come back and introduce myself. And they ended up becoming part therapist, part comedy buddy, part guy who...
I would highly suggest that you not label someone who should be a friend or anyone who's not a therapist as your therapist. Okay, like, yeah, you should talk about things, but I feel like if you're describing them as your therapist, then the relationship sounds very lopsided to me. Like, it sounds like you're probably always the one who's talking. That's not fair to expect of someone, for them to just like have an unlimited capacity for, stuff that would necessitate therapy.
Who was showing up to barbecue every day when I was struggling to remind myself to eat, and they showed up right when I needed them. And so, like,
what made you turn around?
What are you talking about? Dave made Dave turn around. Oh, like, what do you mean? What made you? I thought it was pretty clear. Like, Dave was running, then he stopped, and then he turned around. Like,
to be honest, I don't know. I mean, like, it felt it.
Why do you have to go and make things so complicated? See, the way you're making up tons of bullshit makes me frustrated.
Now it feels more like a miracle. Like, oh wow, I had no concept of what I was turning around for. I'm not like close necessarily to my neighbors generally. I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas, on a parcel of land where I can't see who's on either side.
Okay, first of all, Dave, when people say they're close to their neighbors, they don't mean literally physically close, okay? Because otherwise, if physical proximity made you close to your neighbors, then the rural areas would not have a reputation for being tighter with their neighbors than cities do. But that is how it is. It's like cities, you're usually more aloof, even though you're literally closer to your neighbors. They're not talking about like sight distance. Second of all, can you imagine making a semi-impulsive decision to go back and talk to someone that you've not talked to, and you actually are like, I don't know what made me do that. I think it was a miracle. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Side of my house. And yet, on that day, for whatever reason, that was the instinct, that was the tug. There's a lot of what I end up writing in the book is about trusting the voice, whether it's Glennon Doyle's definition of knowing or voice of God or intuition or gut. But like, there've been plenty of times in these last 2 years where there was something that was tugging, and that was an intuition that had a sense of what was necessary for me to do that I didn't consciously have an appreciation for. And now that voice was presenting itself, it was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna say yes to this, even though I don't know why.
You've got one voice so telling you you're a loser, everything is gone and lost. And
oh, that's not a voice. That's he forgot to close the browser tab that had my video open.
Another voice telling you to do something that ends up being good for you. How do you differentiate?
Well, I mean, I first have to give credit to a therapist that does work in self, right?
This is a licensed therapist, because I don't think I've ever heard of the specialization self.
In having lost identity, attempt to find someone who might help me find who I am. And I did this work inside of something called internal family systems, where I am self, my voice inside of my head or my emotions are parts. And the way that I am able to then develop a relationship between self and these parts allows me to not be them. So the first part with the voice is, all right, you got a voice in your head. Some of it's true, some of it's bullshit. Okay, how do you differentiate? Well, first you have to say, I'm not the voice. That voice that's speaking is not me. I am the witness to the voice. In a very untethered soul, Michael Singer kind of way, I am not the voice. I'm watching the voice. I'm listening to the voice. It's my job then, as the listener, to do the investigative work of understanding which of the things that are being represented are real. Like, how many of them are fact-based, evidence-based? Is there any reason
based on this description, my fact-based, evidence-based recommendation is Seroquel.
To question the voice? And a lot of the things inside of like why we believe what we believe or why we do the things we do come back to programming that the voice is echoing. And so if we were raised in a patriarchal society, or we were raised inside of a certain religious belief, or we have parents or family of origin that believe a certain way, that voice often is the echo of something that existed from when we're 5 years old. And the question that I have to go back and ask is, well, did the people who were the originators of that story have credibility?
Why would you say the originators of the people who were the originators of that story, when you could just say the authors?
Like, do they have credibility generally? And oftentimes they do. You believe things usually because they've come from someone of authority that's important in your life, that you love or crave love from, and that you, for whatever reason, have put on a pedestal or respect. But just because someone at some point in your life had credibility doesn't mean that they have credibility on that topic, or that there's even relevance necessarily for their opinion that maybe, right, I was born in 75, my parents were good people, they meant well. A thing that they were programming into me when I was 5 in 1980 may not have practical relative to when it was, good then application in 2021. It likely doesn't. And
I don't want to go full Logan here, but there's some. Anyone see that rage? His face is not usually that like taut and like tense. I mean, it's usually somewhat, but not like that. Oof, that made me a little uncomfortable. He clearly has some issues with his parents.
Going back and questioning if that story that was told then is still a credible story today is part of how, when you hear the voice and that bullshit side of the voice is chirping, you get to go and ask, where did this voice come from? I'm not the voice, I'm the witness to it. And does it actually have a credible connection to anything that has practical application in my life today?
And so utility becomes the guide as you're assessing all these different voices, basically.
Yeah, utility, but also, and this will sound crazy because when it was described to me as a thing to
David already sounds crazy.
I thought it crazy, and then I just started doing it. I actually will name these feelings that I have and invite them to sit at an imaginary table inside of my psyche and have a conversation with them.
And it works.
Can we hear that again?
Invite them to sit at an imaginary table doing it. I actually will name these feelings that I have and invite them to sit at an imaginary table inside of my psyche and have a conversation with them.
And it works because you make them the other and not
Once again, Sarah Quill.
yourself.
Yeah. And so for example, I have anxiety as a thing that has Clark, who is, the opposite of Superman.
Clark Kent is not the opposite of Superman. Bizarro is the opposite of Superman.
I have to ask.
Of course, no, but yeah, Clark, who is the opposite of Superman, is a thing, and I'm talking like situational anxiety, not clinical anxiety. Like when I get anxious, I used to try and mute the anxiety. I used to try and push it away. I would become a dick to people, whatever it was. I was not great with anxiety.
Oh my God, Dave used to be a dick to people.
And now Clark shows up. I get to sit Clark at this table, have this conversation. Clark, for what reason do you believe yourself to be here? And
Jesus Christ. Do you hear that sentence? Clark, for what reason do you believe yourself to be here? When most English-speaking humans would say, Clark, why do you think you're here? I don't understand how he comes up with these surreal circumlocutions where he'll be like here's the point he wants to make, and like here's him over here, and he's like twirling around, nope, oh, so close. I don't know how you come up with so many extra words.
And Clark, right, as a part inside of me, believes himself to be serving a helpful role, right? So Clark doesn't realize he's a negative emotion. Clark thinks, I'm here for a reason. And then my job as the observer of Clark having shown up is to sit him down at the table and ask, why are you here? And most often, Clark shows up in my life because there is something in my life that has enough ambiguity around it that a simple plan, or even in some instances, a more complex plan, but a plan being applied in that ambiguous part of my life would give Clark permission to leave, because his job in having drawn my focus to the area is done. He's here as a helper. And so in a crazy way, not that like I celebrate anxious moments or Clark's arrival.
That's kind of what you just did. Also, usually anxiety is not trying to encourage you to plan. It's usually like at its root, it's just encouraging you to don't do the thing that you're anxious about. It's usually just saying, yeah, let's avoid that.
I've changed the way I see Clark or anxiety as a negative thing and more as a clue. Oh, this is
Oh, I'm so excited to not have anxiety anymore. It's just a clue. Cool.
intel. Information is being presented to me, and if I can sit down and have a conversation with it, I might get to the bottom of why he's here.
Dave, it's not possible for extra information that you don't already have to come into your brain from within your brain. Yeah, it's
getting ourselves back together. We're starting to get a grip on things. We've got our pillars. We're making progress. At what point does it become, I'm going to start now putting a new vision in place? And how do you make sure that you don't end up falling for the same traps that got you to the point where you needed the creative destruction in the beginning?
Yeah. So the question that I really spent a ton of time with was, who did I want to be before I became who I'd become? Be back in the day. Right? I believe that each of us were created with very intentional design. Whether you are a faith person.
God, it drives me nuts when people like this, or like really in any space, but they bring religion into it and stuff like this, and they're like, oh, well, you don't have to be religious or anything, and it's like, actually, you kind of do have to be religious. I feel like, number one, it probably comes from a place of trying to appeal to both like believers and non-believers. But I also think it comes from, that's just kind of the way that people who have never actually questioned their beliefs think, because they don't think that you actually have different beliefs. They kind of just think that you do have their beliefs, but you're just like bad at it or something. It's so annoying, because it's like, if you're going to premise the entire thing you're making me sit through on this very intrinsically religious belief, then you're wasting my time, because you are, to me, it's just completely incompatible with my view of the world. Maybe we have different beliefs, so whatever, but don't tell me that I don't have to have a religious belief in order for your material to still be applicable, because you do. Okay, and that's fine. Just let people know beforehand. Imagine that I'm going to teach you to ski. Okay, we go out to the mountain, we have all our gear on, we manage to make it on the chairlift, we manage to unload, and then we kind of find a spot for me to give the first lesson, and then I turn around to give the first lesson, and I'm like, okay, now, you don't have to believe that gravity is an upward force that pulls you towards space, but gravity is a force that pulls upward towards space. So we're going to focus on how to stop resisting gravity, because gravity is what's holding you up. It's the only thing keeping you from falling. When we resist gravity's upward pull into space, that's when we fall. Okay, ready? Yeah, you would probably look at me like, holy shit, what? And you probably would have been barely listening to me after the first sentence, because the idea that gravity is an upward force is fundamentally at odds with everything you have ever seen in your entire life. And my opening disclaimer of, well, you don't have to have my beliefs, doesn't change the fact that actually the entire discussion and all of the material that follows is premised on it. And to get any real value or any real applicability, you do have to share those beliefs. Drives me crazy.
I just believe that there is something of a higher power that had just a conceit in having created you the way that you were created, your wiring, Tom, different than mine, your experiences different than mine, the way that you love or feel, all different. And in that difference, it makes you this limited edition one of one. And in that limited edition one of one that you are, you have an opportunity to honor the intention of your creator. And the work that I'm now on this planet to do, and that I would argue anyone is on this planet to do, is find a way every day to honor the intention of a creator who had very intentional design in the way that you were put together and the way that you've experienced the things that you have. So my question was, why was I created? Like, what was the intention?
And what are the clues you used to
See, and that is, I don't understand why he doesn't like preface this, you know, and why he would, the fact that you could say all of that and then in the same like section say that you don't have to be religious to get it. Yeah, you do. Because to me, it's such a non-starter if you're going to say that you're that there's intention. There's no intention. Like like that is such a stretch to say that like there was something intentionally create. Like that's a very fundamental belief. Like you know, not everybody thinks that, right?
suss out the answer?
Well, the things that I think have been, like in the instances where I felt closest to purpose or closest to fulfillment,
Which feels like
I am going to end my life proud of myself. Okay. Or, I mean, like, I've heard you say it so many times, and I just believe this so much. The most important question you can ask is, how do I feel about myself when I'm by myself? And the answer to that question is when you feel like you are in integrity with having done everything you possibly could have on that day to honor the measure of your creation, that you feel connected to, wow, I have been given these unique skills. So part of it is skills, right? Are there things that you...
Holy shit. Dave, when they ask that question, the answer they're looking for is like a scale of 1 to 10 or like one word. Okay, like good, fine, contented. Like
you can develop mastery around, that you have uniquely been blessed with or gifted with, that in the exploitation of those things, you might generate a feeling of pride for yourself, have legacy at the end of life, feel like you mattered when everything is said and done. And the utilization of those skills or not is the difference between integrity and feeling great about yourself when you're by yourself. The second is passion, right? You have to be connected to something that you have passion for. You can develop skill in almost anything. I can argue that with 10,000 hours or whatever it ends up being, you can develop mastery over time. I don't think you can develop passion though.
Really?
Oh no, I think you either have passion or you don't. And our job is to play in a ton of pools to find out where curiosity...
Pools, but not open water.
...might lead to passion. And so asking...
So it still has to be discovered.
Still has to be discovered, which again was part of like all right, the world's just blown up. A lot of really, really important things in your life had to die so that you might be brought back to life. Who are you going to be is in some ways connected to what you have passion for. You couldn't answer a simple question about what you like to do in your spare time. You better start trying a bunch of things to find out what you like to do in your spare time. There's likely a connection to honoring the intention of your creator and what you like to do in your spare time, or what you would wake up and not even feel like it's work because you just love doing it so much.
Okay. Even if you love what you're doing for work, which, number one, can we just get rid of the whole love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life? I'm sorry. Even if you love what you do, it's still working. It's kind of some kind of fucked up capitalist notion that like, if you're enjoying it, it doesn't count as work. Like, no, I'm good. And Dave, spare time cannot be used for work. Okay. So if you're getting up and it doesn't feel like work, then that's not your spare time. Okay? Because spare time is when it's not work. And also, Dave, what did you find your passion for to do in your spare time? Because it can't be this motivational and author shit, because that's work. Okay? We're talking about spare time. Do you understand the concept of spare time?
Hence the season of yes.
Hence the season of yes. And the third thing is, you've got to be able to take that passion and that opportunity for mastery and apply that to impacting other people.
Why?
Because it's hard to feel like you matter if you don't. I really feel like there is something in the goals that I had in my career at Disney relative to the
If you are going to spend if you're going to stake all your hopes for feeling that you have meaning or whatever, or that you have some kind of fulfillment on work, you're probably setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. I would highly suggest you find that elsewhere.
goals that I have in the career and legacy that I will create for the rest of my life that are disconnected by a single feature. And I'm super proud of my career inside of entertainment, 20 plus years, assistant to president. It was a good run. Almost every single one of my goals was connected to individual achievement, right? I want to be this title. I want to make this money. I want to have this influence. I want to be invited to these tables and roll with this crew. And
what about your kids?
as much as, man, in that run, I was able to sit at some of those tables and enjoy some of that salary and have some of the title and whatever else, it felt empty because it was not connecting to impacting other people in the
It felt empty because if you are trying to squeeze all the meaning of life out of your job, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get emptiness.
way that, having now left my career for my calling, I feel like I am actually
Aren't you supposed to be good at your calling?
doing work on an everyday basis to serve. Now, guess what? I can still provide for my family, but I'm definitely playing inside of the passion pool and using
Oh, is that like an orgy or?
gifts that were uniquely given to me, and now life experience that is super unique to me and not any other person on the planet, to hopefully have someone see themselves in my stories, understand some of the things that have worked in my own journey of transformation and becoming, so that they might have their own journey themselves.
So amazing. So, all right, that I think
Sounded sarcastic.
does a really good job of explaining the built part, like the process of how you put yourself back together.
My God, we're only on the first word of the title.
Talk to me about courage and this idea of being willing to lose sight of the shore.
Yeah. There's something, the book has a lot of analogies around the sea. I am not one that even likes the sea, which is hilarious.
Then why did you write about it? Why did you write about something you don't know anything about? Because it's just going to make you sound like an idiot, because sailing a boat is really complicated and really difficult. And you're going to sound like a moron trying to talk about things that you don't know anything about. Why didn't you could have done like corporate metaphors or something. People would understand that. And then you would actually sound like you knew what you're talking about.
But
Cover of your book is the ocean. I
the
love
cover of
it.
the book is the ocean. I'm seasick thinking about it.
Why would you pick that then?
But there's this interesting relationship that all of us have to familiarity, to comfort, to the status quo things we know, that has us in some ways deitizing or putting up on a pedestal the conceit that what has been will be, in a way that doesn't allow us to even consider leaving what we've known. And if, the suggestion in the book is you can't actually make it to the other side of the ocean unless you lose sight of the shore, that other.
Okay, Dave, for a lot of people, it is not an option to metaphorically lose sight of the other shore, because the consequences for that would be catastrophic. Like it would potentially lead to, I'm assuming we're talking about careers. It would lead to not finding another job. It would, maybe you wouldn't be able to feed your kids. Maybe you wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage. Maybe you wouldn't be able to afford rent. Maybe your car would get repossessed. You'd end up out on the street. And I know that you don't get that, Dave, that for you, it's just been a matter of, I just need to have courage and I can lose sight of the shore so I can get to the other shore. Okay. But for other people, the simple fact of the matter is that it's not an issue of courage. It's an issue of, if they do that and anything at all does not go according to plan, like they could end up on the street. Like it could be catastrophic in a way that you are fundamentally unable to comprehend, because never once in your entire life have you ever been at risk of that. Not once. And that makes you, that puts you in the minority among people. So you're unrelatable.
The side of the ocean being the fulfillment of your fullest potential, or connecting to that idea of honoring the measure of your creation, right? You have been created for purpose, but that purpose requires that you get outside of your safe harbor, become unmoored, and ultimately enduring the choppy waters, believing though that you were built for those choppy waters, and then having the courage to continue sailing once you've now lost sight of what was familiar. And the idea of that safe harbor, even if it's connected to suffering, right? Like we as people have in some ways convinced ourselves that we are willing to stay inside of suffering that we know, rather than facing the possibility of something new, because the knowns of that existing suffering feel predictable. And life wasn't meant for suffering. I mean, like it doesn't mean that.
There was a somewhat valid concept in there somewhere. I actually think I've stated in my opinion, better version of this before in one of my videos. And it is that people will accept just about any justification, no matter how flimsy, if it means they can keep doing what they're already doing.
You're not going to have to go through hard times or bad times, but you can decide to push away from it. The challenge in pushing away, though, is that safe harbor is surrounded on all sides by fear. And the only way to get to learning, the only way to get to growth, and my argument is that you have to be growing in order to feel a sense of fulfillment. If you're not growing, you're dying. And in that death state, you will not feel the things that you are hoping to feel when you're by yourself. But there's no drawbridge around the moat. There is a moat of
how many fucking metaphors are you going to bring in here?
Fear. And so the courage piece just suggests that you are not going to eliminate fear just because you decide to be courageous. You're going to become prepared to face your fear, which is the thing that's necessary in that journey that has to go through it in order to become. So we have to face our fear, or we will stay stuck. We will stay inside of this familiar place, the comfort zone, the suffering we know, at the expense of who we could become.
It's a really interesting idea that hides in plain sight in your title, that you are built through courage. So it isn't, you didn't title it built through pain or built through trials, it built through courage. So what is it? One, it'd be great, like define courage. What is that? And then why is that thing so self-shaping?
Yeah, I mean, we all have a choice in our response to change, right? We can medicate through coping mechanisms that aren't good for us. When times get tough, we fail on a frequency that we're unfamiliar with, where we are exposed as not having every single thing together at the beginning of doing something new. Or we can, again, it's like storytelling, you referred to it a minute ago, like see those opportunities as the reason why we're going to acquire new skills, why we, in the challenge or the breaking down of muscle, will have it built back up even stronger. And the decision to put yourself in those situations, even though you know you will be triggered, but deciding to do it with a set of skills or resources or habits or positive coping mechanisms that engineer the possibility of that evolution is the opportunity. But it still takes courage. It still requires that you face that fear.
So putting it in your context, in the way that you think about things, that we have a purpose that we were born with, life isn't meant to be suffering, but yet you have to go through it. Why does it all have to be so hard? And why does the hard seem like it's unavoidable? There is no fulfilling life without difficulty.
Yeah. This is why do bad things happen to good people? This isn't about fairness. I think that fairness is a construct that the universe does not play by or even care about. But there is something in the way that you build tenacity in actually having to be tenacious, or the way that you build strength in actually getting knocked down and having to get back up, that makes the two connected in a way that can't be disconnected. I wish it wasn't the way, right? Like, I don't want to relive 2020 in the way that most people don't want to relive 2020, and yet I can see so clearly that, again, I am who I've become and will look back at the end of my life, acknowledging that 2020 is among the most important years of my life at the end of my life because of, not in spite of, those things that I went through.
Toxic positivity. Also, you're thinking about death too much, Dave.
Now, what I'm hopeful for is that the experience of those hard things now has given me a new set of evidence of, one, my ability to handle the hard, but also when, not if, but when my next bad hand is dealt, that I might, in receiving it in real time, appreciate, just like last time, this is gonna suck as I crawl through the tunnel to get out of Shawshank, but there is still that rain sequence at the end once I get through it. I've experienced it in a way that when I was starting the crawl out of the tunnel 2 years ago, I didn't know that the sun could come up ever again.
Dave, what are you talking about? Of course the sun is going to come up again. If the sun weren't going to come up again, we would all be thrown into space because of the momentum after the Earth stopped rotating.
Because all I smelled was the shit in the tunnel and the darkness that sat in front of me. But one step after the next, cultivating the courage to keep going, even though I didn't necessarily know how it was going to come out. Sometimes playing into some almost delusional optimism for the way that I, again, had that faith that there was another side, that there was the promise of what might exist inside of that body of water. Keep going. And the reality is, yep, I'm now prepared. I'm not going to enjoy going through a hard thing next time, but I have the evidence that suggests I have become so many things that I would never have become if I didn't have to go through the hardest thing I've ever been through.
I never want to hear the word become ever again.
Why do most people get stuck? Because divorce is the perfect example. The number of people I've seen that just get obliterated by divorce, and they end up in a loop that they can't shake out of.
Once again, how can you say that Dave's not in a loop when he hasn't had enough time to display that?
I'm just curious, when you think back, what was the thing that was the most dangerous that you found yourself like, whoa, that reaction, or the way that I thought about it, or whatever, I could see how people could end up in a never-ending loop on that one?
I mean, I think a lot of it ends up just coming back to the stories that we believe, right? We have had a bad experience and then believe that that's just our lot in life, right? I'm just a person who doesn't ever have things go my way, or every time I've tried something new, it ends up failing, so I'm probably going to fail again, in a way that ends up being something of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because again, when you have that as a belief, and it frames the foundation for how your day starts, how your month is going to look, you're out there scanning the horizon for the evidence to help support that belief that it's just going to be a tough time for you. And that evidence will present itself. And the thing is, I'm not an advocate of toxic positivity or rose.
Dave, everything that you've said up to this point was toxic positivity. Okay, do you think that people who advocate toxic positivity think that they're advocating toxic positivity? No. Toxic positivity is a label that is put on these practices and teachings from the outside. The person's not like, I'm a toxic positivity coach. Like, that's not how it works.
Colored glasses necessarily, but I do believe that you get to choose the thing that you're going to go looking for. And if you can get up and say, I'm going to go out and find some evidence of a good day, the likelihood of you having one is just higher.
Okay, but that's not the same thing as looking for evidence that good things will for sure come out of something that was incredibly negative.
It doesn't guarantee that you're going to have one. I had this opportunity, I talked about it in my book, I got to see her on this trip. My 99-year-old Grandma Lee has been through everything. I mean, at like 99, you've been through everything, right? She's been through a couple of wars. She's had to bury 2 husbands. She's a single mother of 5 kids that has lost a son to cancer, a grandson by suicide. Like, she's seen things. And now at 99, almost every one of her friends is gone, right? Like, she's experienced a lot. And I talked to her at the very beginning of this journey, and she said, well, I can tell you this, I have been through a lot of hard things. I didn't like going through them, but I have been through a lot of hard things. And you know what I know about all of those hard things? I got to the other side. And that's why I know that you will get to the other side too. And you're not going to like it while you're doing it, but when you get to the other side of this, you have an appreciation for yourself, for your strength, the way that you can do hard things because of the way that you did hard things. And I know this because of what ends up being 99 years of experience on this earth. And so I think sometimes...
Weren't you just trash talking your parents and everything they told you in 1975 or whatever the hell? Don't you think that maybe they also have more life experience than you?
As you find yourself at the beginnings of whatever your tunnel ends up being, the crawling through it kind of thing that sits in front of you, the experience that someone else has that's gone through or been a witness to the power of how that hard thing created that post-traumatic growth in their life can be something that you can borrow a little bit of hope from, so that in that borrowed hope, you can become hopeful. There's a Les Brown quote that I used in both of my books now, but hope in the future is power in the present. And I just believe so much that if you...
What does that mean?
It basically, if you can't cast a hopeful vision for what is possible next, you will be left powerless in the present to even get there or make any kind of momentum that might allow you to get unstuck.
So being hopeful about your future makes you powerful now.
Yeah. I mean, back to your question of why do people get stuck? I think people get stuck because they let the circumstances of what's happening in real time cast a probability future, a likely to happen next future that is clouded by the subjectivity of what they're currently experiencing. So they don't have a long frame objectivity lens that they're looking at. They're like, boom, things are hard now, which means they're gonna be hard in the future. And that absence of hope leaves them without a lot of motor.
I think that you vastly overestimate the degree and amount of choices that people have in their lives. Okay, it's not just that they don't, it's usually like they don't have these opportunities and the ability to make these choices the way that you do.
To actually get out of the mud that they're stuck inside of. But if you can cast a hopeful future because of believing that it's going to be there, or having someone in this instance that has been through a bunch of hard things, giving me that guarantee that I will get through this, that I will become something because of it, and that I will be better prepared to handle it when I get to the other side, all right, that gives me some hope. And in that hope, I now have an engine that can help me get out of the rut.
You mentioned a phrase that I've heard before, but I've never talked to anybody about it. Toxic positivity. So when does positivity become toxic?
Well, I think that there's the risk anytime that we are talking about anything positive that doesn't also appreciate privilege. As a for example, like we have to stop and just appreciate that, if you have access, or in my instance, I'm a man and I'm a straight person and not someone who lives inside of a community that sometimes is, being prejudiced against. I happen to be Caucasian, right? There are things that in me suggesting that anything is possible, or you can, if you work hard enough, you're going to get there, that might underestimate some of the headwinds that just systemically exist inside of the world. So
what you just did.
I hear that, but would it ever benefit somebody to take a pessimistic view of that?
Yes, because you could save them from wasting a lot of time on something that's not going to happen, and you could make sure that they are not prevented from perhaps coming up with something else that is more probable that they would also perhaps like to accomplish. So yeah, absolutely. I think that doing a pessimistic analysis of something can keep someone from wasting their time, and also keep them from missing out on something else that they would never have thought of if they had kept trying that one thing.
No, I mean, I think that you're always going to be in a better position if you're able to cast positive, hope-filled vision for what ends up being possible for you next. But also, it can be dangerous if you're not acknowledging that, hey, there are some people that are going to have a better chance at winning the lottery because they've got 10 million tickets purchased in currency for some of the things that are already happening inside of their life relative to the person who's just getting a single ticket.
It's interesting. I can see how quickly we could derail this whole conversation, but I will say that to me, everything should be judged through the lens of usability. So you have a goal, and a belief is either going to move you towards that goal or it's going to move you away from that goal. And negativity actually does have a purpose. It can be quite useful, but I would say in very limited quantities. And to Les Brown's point about, if you don't have hope for the future, you have no power in the present. So somebody spending any amount of energy saying, hey, stop spreading this optimistic view because it's really, really hard for some other people. It's like, those are the people that need hope the most. And the energy should go into finding a way to help them see a path to something positive. And yeah, I mean, I think that Les Brown has it right, that the extraordinary answer is, put all of your energy into finding a way to dial the positivity up for them, help them create a view of their future that is positive. And the people for whom it will be the most difficult are the people who need it the most.
I don't disagree with that. You did say something though that triggered a reminder of the last time I was here, which is I am someone that taps into negative visualization.
You mentioned that in the book.
And so like there were times inside of this experience in the last couple of years where when faced with, am I going to turn back to these negative coping mechanisms? Am I going to be someone who stays on the mat after getting knocked down? The answer sometimes revealed itself in that, how do I want that room of people to toast me at the 60th or 70th birthday party? Do I want that room to be filled or not? And like the negative side of that, people aren't coming or don't have something to say, that's a motivator. That like connecting to that, what could happen if I don't get up? What could happen if I feel sorry for myself or just lay down and stop trying? Super motivating for me.
No, I think that's really powerful. So to me, and obviously you and I look at things through a slightly different lens, but I think we end up in a really similar place. For me, nature has given us two things, pleasure and pain, and that's it. And so to wipe out half of that, because it doesn't feel, I mean, it's a negative energy. So it's but it's that through again, my lens, through millions of years of evolution, you end up with this brain that rewards you for doing things that lead you towards, from an evolutionary perspective, survival and procreation. And then it gives you pain when you're doing things that aren't moving you in that right direction. And so one question that I had asked you earlier.
That's a really dumb and simplistic way to look at it, because that same brain will also give you pleasure if you smoke crystal meth or shoot heroin. And it will give you pain if you, are doing those things habitually and you stop. So it's dangerous to start giving evolution agency, because it doesn't have agency. It's not a conscious process that's happening.
About why is this hard? Like, why does it need to be hard? And it's interesting to hear a more faith-based take on that.
Yeah.
But for me, the answer is because you had to go face a saber-toothed tiger. You had to face insane weather, either extreme heat, extreme cold, whatever. Every day of your life was dangerous. You didn't, you were talking that, there's a snake on your property and your neighbor warned you and you thought, yeah, I really do need to think about the fact that this is tall grass and Texas, like there could be snakes there. Now imagine a world in which everywhere you turn, there is something trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And so you have to have this massive push to do hard things. And I think that it is embedded in the human brain. If you do not do hard things, you will feel the sense of unease. There's something wrong. And I think this is one of the issues with modernity is we end up making so many things easy. I mean, people that are at or below the poverty line still often have a refrigerator and AC. And it's like, these are...
You suggesting that they shouldn't?
Not to in any way downplay the devastation that is poverty. Let me be...
But you literally just did.
Really fucking clear about that. But there is a world that we came up through that was far more terrifying, and there was death at every turn. And so from that needing to wire the brain in a certain way, it's like, if things get too comfortable, you don't know why things feel off, but they feel off.
Yeah.
And this is why I think rich kids end up imploding. They didn't have to work, and not every rich kid, obviously, but...
Okay, number one, I think you're really just overthinking this. I think it's pretty simple. The reason why it feels good, the reason why difficult things kind of lead to that satisfaction is because we usually, being a good problem solver probably increases survival. And so you get a lot of satisfaction when something is like difficult or it's a problem and you figure out how to solve it. And you're like, oh, I just figured out how to solve that. Awesome. I think it's really not any more complicated than that. And second of all, the reason that rich kids implode is because you don't call it an implosion when it's, let's suppose it's a poor kid and he gets, arrested or whatever. Is that an implosion? No, you wouldn't call that an implosion, now would you? Because to you, that was an expected outcome. For it to be an implosion, you need to have something to lose. You need to have you need to have a structure built up to implode. So the reason why rich kids implode is because they are, by definition, the only kids able to implode, because they're the only ones who have things that are able to be lost, and they're the ones where you don't expect that as an outcome.
They end up struggling with the fact that so many things came easily, and they don't necessarily understand that that's why they feel this deep sense of discomfort.
Yeah. What's interesting, I know I've been a person of faith my life, growing up, and even, throughout my life today. But it's easy to say that, oh, I'm a believer, or I have faith, when it hadn't been tested to the depths that it was tested. And
did this make you wonder if there was a God?
I had many, yet no, but I expressed anger to God in a way that I had never been angry. And the good
Why
news
are you
is,
making me go through this?
why are you making me go through this? Really, really upset, really angry. And I, one, came out of this with an appreciation that God can very easily handle my anger. Thank you, all is fine. But also this appreciation that the way that I feel about my faith is fundamentally different because of having to have my faith tested.
How was your faith tested if you at no point considered that perhaps God was not real? That's testing your faith has to involve that. Okay. That if you never thought he wasn't real, then your faith was not tested.
I was forced to my knees.
And so let me ask, if the challenge isn't that God exists, the challenge to your faith is that God has your best interest at heart?
My prayers. So this is like the
Answer the question.
crazy thing that you get to see as time goes by. But there's also privilege in this answer because things end up working out well for me in the circumstances that have come to pass, having created something that was good. But
What? Did you hear the question?
I was asking for fulfillment, and I was asking to feel a certain way about myself, like I wanted to love myself, and a lot of things that end up becoming the byproduct of the work that was only possible in the hardest thing I've ever experienced. So God's like, yeah, you were praying for these things, and good news, you got the things that you prayed for.
Okay, Dave says his faith was tested, and then he describes his faith being tested by he prayed for things and then got them. Wow, that must have been a really difficult test of faith.
You thought you had a say in the way that those things would be created in your life. You don't have a say. And that, by the way, this is a, is God, pulling every single string kind of a question? I do believe in the free will of man, and yep, I'm making a lot of my own choices. I don't think that everything happens for a reason. I think that there's an opportunity for us to figure out how to make the things that happen matter for us in whatever way we decide to use them for our good or the good of other people. But I find myself the recipient of the things that I was praying for because of the circumstances, the hard circumstances that were thrown my way.
He never answered the fucking question.
But I will say there's a verse I use in the book, James 4:8, draw near to God, he will draw nearer to you. I was also, as I was put to my knees by this thing that was just, holy cow, harder than I'd ever expected I'd have to endure.
He's put to his knees by this thing that was, holy cow, harder than I ever expected.
Or begging for proximity to God, and wouldn't you know it, in that prayer, after I was done yelling at him, right, I found myself unbelievably close.
There's another Bible verse that you mention in the book, and I found it very interesting to me. And you were talking about there was this woman, she had children and then had a stroke, and she had to relearn to walk and everything. And she said there was a verse about, though there are no sheep or fruit on the tree, I forget the exact quote, I shall love God or something.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, everybody should take that verse and put your own pain points in there. Do you remember the exact verbiage, since I'm butchering it?
It is the idea of what you speak of, which is though all of these things have happened, they didn't happen the way that I would have hoped, I'm still going to give glory to God. I'm still going to be thankful for, grateful for. And again, I think it ends up being this call to, can you still go on the hunt for the good that can still exist inside of the hard? And so for me, in the way that I was able to, in having, my kid came to me wanting to have me teach him how to shave. Very small thing, but oldest son, hey, can you show me how to shave?
Very small thing. That seems huge to me.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't appreciate it was going to become a huge thing that would provoke a very emotional reaction from me. But what it was this reminder of how many more beautiful moments with my children were still going to come as I tied a bow tie for a big dance or walked someone down an aisle or whatever it was. Because in the moment when it feels like life is ending, you forget that there's so many firsts and so many nexts and so many beautiful moments. And so, took the kids down to fish at the local.
Until like, I think like this past like weekend, like Dave hadn't seen his kids in like 4 weeks. So I'm having like, pardon me, struggling to believe this.
Pond and we catch a fish. Like the reminder that fish still bite was a surprisingly emotional thing in the midst of like not being able to totally connect to all the good. And so whether it's that verse or just like being observant of the 400 mini miracles that are happening around us any day, I've said it now 3 times in the show, but you find what you're looking for.
So powerful.
And so as I was now being reminded of that good in that moment with my kid and the razor, whatever it was just this prompt to be a detective and be on that hunt for the other good things that were already and still present, even in the midst of hard things.
We both know and love Mel Robbins. And in her most recent book, The High Five Habit, she talks about looking for hearts. And because you're looking for them, you end up seeing things that really, like the shape of it isn't quite a heart, but you suddenly begin interpreting it as a heart, which is a really cool idea. I'm a huge believer in you get what you look for, you see what you look for.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful idea.
I can see a heart now.
Is it though?
Behind you and these diamonds on the wall, it's very bizarre.
It's funny how that works. Like the idea of priming is so powerful.
Yeah.
But is it though?
Yeah. So getting people to do these mental tricks, I think, is really useful.
I think it's not.
You have a lot of them in your book. As you think about moving forward now, and you talk in the book about roles and how we can sort of become something that we didn't necessarily intend to become because of the way that other people think of us. How are you protecting yourself against sliding into old habits or old patterns or letting society begin to dictate who you become?
Yeah, I mean, I've really tried to ask myself, how do I want to experience the week? How do I want to experience a day in the week? I know I want to wake up and click that button of being in my passion and using things that I have mastery for to serve other people. That's like the thing I want to do, but how I experience it is a big part of like the thing I'm trying to solve. And that question of like, who did I want to be before I became who I'd become? I tell the story in the book of this insane God moment chance encounter with Dan Rather, who I end up getting sat next to on an airplane in the midst of trying to answer this question of who am I now that I am not who I thought I was going to be. And it was this reminder.
When you were a kid.
When I was a kid, just as a sign of how dorky I was and how long it took for me to kiss a girl, Dan Rather was my childhood idol. I mean, between Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, like I wanted to be the nightly news person. And when I was sitting with him, he was so generous with his time, a couple hours on a plane, like totally violating that can we have a conversation rule. I got off of
Kind of sounds like that was your passion right there.
The plane, and there was this like giddiness for having been to the 19-year-old version of me while in college, anchoring a news desk, the 2 a.m. DJ time slot, coveted that I was, spinning records. I was reminded that I wanted to be a reporter as I was trying to believe in myself to become one. So I'd been working inside of a business. I was making this decision in real time to figure out what next was going to look like in my life, my career. And I was going to have my first book coming out. I was going to coach for the first time. I was going to have a podcast. And as much as my 99-year-old grandma still asks me, do you have a career? should we be worried about you?
That is amazing.
You know, when I try to explain to her what I do, it's hard with.
What are you talking about? I'm sure she is familiar with the concept of like a motivational speaker or a self-help author. Those books have existed for a long, long time. Like, why don't you just say that you're a self-help author? Just say you do what Rachel did, but bad.
What ends up being an unconventional kind of job. But the easiest way to explain it is I'm a reporter.
If that's what you actually told her, you are a liar. Okay, for one thing, a reporter is supposed to actually convey information, and they're supposed to convey the information in order from most important to least important, and I've never heard you do that.
I take my experiences, I take the amazing insights that come from people like yourself or others that I admire. I try to consolidate them into a way that might be understood, in part because of hopefully people seeing themselves in my story and storytelling, but that also maybe is a byproduct of me being someone who's got a skill in connecting to them with something of an empathy bridge that allows them to have a breakthrough, that they wouldn't have otherwise had. That's why I'm here. And so when I think about like my legacy or what I want to be known for, how I'd hope to be eulogized at the end of my life, I had a great career for 20 years in entertainment, and I hope that nobody brings it up. I mean, and not because I have anything but pride for it, but because
that's the only thing that you actually have to offer. That experience is the only thing you have to offer.
Because I know now, having been so connected to why I'm here, getting back to that person I wanted to be before I became who I'd become, that this is the legacy of my life. This is my life's work, and I'm just getting started.
The book isn't your first, but dude, it's really good. And in terms of brick by brick building that legacy, man, your written work is phenomenal. Certainly what you're doing on the podcasting and YouTube and all that stuff, it's really fantastic. I think you are well on your way.
Thanks, man.
Where can people follow along on this journey?
Mr. Dave Hollis is both the name of my website and the handle I use on Instagram. So mrdavehollis.com, and I hang out on social here and there, but Instagram's probably the place I spend most of my time, so come hang.
I love it. There it is. All right, guys, trust me, you will not regret reading the book, hanging out with him on social, and if you can do it, hang out with him in real life. That one I can really vouch for. Speaking of things that I can vouch for, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and until...
And then 3 weeks, or not 3 weeks later, and then a few months later, he's in rehab and then out of rehab and not seeing his kids and all over the place. So, yeah. Big fucking yikes. Also, even without that contrast, that was still pretty terrible. So awful. This video had And someone asked last time, like, why I'm even talking about them if they're not relevant or whatever. Okay, the reason why is because this video has 101,000 views and 2,700 likes. That bothers me. And also, it's to make the broader point about self-help and personal development. Next episode, we are going to be looking at some of Rachel's statements, and we're going to be doing some interesting juxtaposition to see what we find. See if we can make her argue with herself. All right, everybody. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye.